thank you for all you do for peace and justice, for all you do to promote the coming of a new world of nonviolence, for all you do for the churches and the religious communities and people in need and our poor earth and the God of peace. Thank you. And I just want to encourage you to keep at it. Now I've got this microphone here, and being nervous here in Holy Salt Lake City, reminded of the story. I don't know if this thing really works, but you heard the story of the young priest giving his first homily, and he's incredibly nervous, and he comes up to the podium, and he taps on the microphone and says, "Something's wrong with this microphone." And the congregation goes, "And also with you." So I hope that's not going to be the situation. Really, thank you for welcoming me. You heard some of my notorious record and my criminal activity for peace, but I don't know if you picked up. Brace yourselves. I'm a Jesuit. I don't know that you don't have Jesuits here in Salt Lake City, do you?
Yeah.
You're liberated.
Yes,
oh, you do? Well, some of you may not know. I know you're here at St. Ambrose about the Jesuits, so I just thought I'd tell you a little story so you can see what you're up against. There was a Franciscan, a Dominican, and a Jesuit. It's my best joke, so hang in here with me. And they're on a weekend retreat, and the priest says, "I want you to imagine your funeral. There you are, laid out in an open casket. There's a packed church. What do you want them all saying about you? Go off and pray about that." So they go off for an hour and pray about it. They come back, the Franciscan says, "I want him to say, he was just like St. Francis. He loved the poor and he worked for peace." And the Dominican said, "I want him to say, he was just like St. Dominic. He loved the Word of God and he was a fiery preacher." And the Jesuit says, "I want him to say, hey, I think he's moving." I'm just trying to cheer us up. I can explain the joke if you didn't get it. And just another disclaimer, please call me John because, my name is so goofy. Father Dear doesn't really work. For me, I just think, how do you put this time that we're living through? Very, very simply. Life is a journey to peace. The spiritual life, to be a human being, is to walk the road to peace. By that I mean just simply living and breathing in peace. Living in the present moment of peace. Making peace with ourselves. Peace with your spouse, your children, your family, your neighbor, with everyone in the church, everyone in Salt Lake City, and everyone on the planet, and seeing life as a journey in the footsteps of all the great peacemakers on the road to peace, to a new future of peace, and the God of peace. Isn't that a beautiful way to see life? But we're not walking the road to peace. We're barreling down the highway to war. How do you describe the moment we live in? I think you could say we live now in a world of permanent war. Permanent war. Permanent war on children. Permanent war on the poor. Permanent war on earth. Permanent war on all creatures. Permanent war on all peoples and the future and the God of peace. We were given this great, mighty prophet of peace and justice, Martin Luther King. And you remember in Memphis, the night before he was killed, he said so famously, "I've been to the mountaintop and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but we as a people will get there." You all remember that. Just before he said that, this great, mighty prophet of peace and justice said these words: "The choice is no longer violence or nonviolence." That's not what we're talking about. Well, then what are we talking about, Dr. King? It's nonviolence or non-existence. Those are the last words of the great prophet to us. And I think they sum up the situation we're in right now. Unless we all become people of nonviolence, we're doomed, Dr. King says, to our self-destructive violence. And that's what I see playing out in the newspapers now all the time. So what I'd like to do is tell you a little bit of stories about how I got involved in this. Just a few words on violence, nonviolence, and maybe the spiritual roots of that, maybe a few little points. And then we can have it out nonviolently and resolve everything. I thought you'd laugh at that, but does that sound like okay? I'm 50 years old, as you just heard, and I grew up in North Carolina and Washington, D.C., and raised a Catholic and went to a Jesuit high school. And long story short, I was so appalled. I went to Duke University, a good Methodist school, to get away from us Catholics. And my brother and I thought, well, if you're going to leave the church, why not go all out and not believe in God? And I thought, well, that's a reasonable thing to do. So I was in a wild, crazy fraternity, and you can read my autobiography if you want, Persistent Peace. And I was choosing this life. But through this professor, I ended up doing some volunteer work in the North Carolina State Hospital for the Criminally Insane. It's an incredible experience. People locked up for life. And I would be with the least and the poorest people on the planet, and then go back to Duke, the best and the brightest, and fraternity party was never ending. And I was thinking, there's no God. If there's no God, there's no meaning to life. So who the heck cares about these poor people? Forget them. Make as much money as you want. Kill anybody you want. Support war. Because there's no meaning to the universe. We're all going to die anyway, and what's the problem? Only I kept going back because they kind of got to me. And one day I came to my senses, literally. I had one of these kind of St. Paul conversions, and when I got back off the fraternity bar school, and I won't go into details. Anyway, I said, oh, of course I believe in God. Of course the whole universe is headed toward love. We're all supposed to love and serve one another. And life is short, and we're all going to die. And we're going to meet this wonderful, loving God, and she's going to say, oh, I'm so happy to see you, and what did you do to help my suffering people? And I thought, just like I'm telling you, all these things were going on. I said, this is all or nothing. I got to give my entire life to this loving God and loving universe. And my next thought was, oh my God, I'm going to have to become a Jesuit. It was a major setback. And I went to see my parents and I said, Mom, Dad, I'm going to become a Jesuit. And they were like, oh, where did we go wrong? They begged me not to, and they asked me to wait for a year. And I was this dopey 20-year-old kid, and I thought, okay. And I thought, well, what do I want to do before I enter the Jesuits? I thought of St. Ignatius, the founder of the Jesuits, St. Francis, St. Dominic. If you read the fine print, before they began their public careers, they all packed up and went to the Holy Land to see where Jesus lived. And I thought, that's a good thing to do. So I go back, Mom, Dad, I'm going by myself for 3 months on holy pilgrimage to Israel to see where Jesus lived. And they thought, it's worse than we thought. It's crazy. And the week I left, Israel invaded Lebanon. And you remember the summer war of 1982, which I researched for my book. All of it orchestrated at the Pentagon, when we killed 60,000 people in 3 months. And I walked very naively through Israel, totally oblivious to everything. All the tour groups were canceled, no tourists. This is 1982, living in Jerusalem, Nazareth, making my way to Galilee, and I camped out there. It was really gorgeous. It's changed a lot now. It's like Salt Lake, this huge blue sea, and these gorgeous green hills, and there was nothing there. And I'm just camping out, and I'm reading the Gospels. You know, I thought that was what I should be doing. And what happened to me was a Wednesday afternoon, and after 8 days, and I walked on the north side of the Sea of Galilee. There's a hill, and there's a little chapel, half the size of this room, and I walked into the chapel, and there in big letters, right on the wall of the church, overlooking the Sea of Galilee, it said, "Blessed are the poor." And I thought, what is that about? And I looked up, and it said, "Blessed are those who mourn. Blessed are the meek. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for justice." I'm looking around. "Blessed are the merciful. Blessed are the pure in heart. Blessed are the peacemakers. Blessed are those who persecuted, working for justice." And on the altar I realized it said, "Love your enemies."